Welcome to our Pearl of Wisdom, which is about fatherhood, the fatherhood vibe. It's so appropriate considering we do have Father's Day coming up shortly. And this week, we're going to look at 7, as Mynoo says, all amazing. We love combining that word awesome and amazing together. But there are 7 amazing gifts to be celebrated in each and every father. And the interesting part about this is we all invoke and we possess mother and fatherhood within us. So no matter what your relationship may be with your father or your offsprings, this Pearl of Wisdom is going to shed a really unique light. And it's going to deliver a fresh perspective from which to rise and shine in our full might. So again, in this Felicitation-led celebration on fatherhood, we embody, we invoke, and we activate these gifts within each one of us that Mynoo is going to share. So this is going to be a great one, whether you're male, female, mother, father, doesn't matter. We all have a little bit of that within us. So welcome again to our 69th Pearl of Wisdom. And we are starting right on time. So hello, Mynoo. So good to see you. And thank you all for joining us tonight for our 69th Pearl of Wisdom on fatherhood.
Hi, I just want to start recording it. And for some reason, I'm not able to see the record button. So just bear with me.
While you're getting that all set up, I'll just give a little bit of a recap again. This fatherhood vibe, everything has a unique vibe. And Mynoo is so astute. She always can tell us what that vibe is. And tonight, in the 69th Pearl of Wisdom, the fatherhood vibe as well as the mothering vibe are going to be present. So we each have that within us. So get ready to delve into our 69th Pearl of Wisdom. And I can't wait. So I think we're ready to go. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it's a very special one for me as well, given that I also had a little bit of a checkered relationship with my father. So it's a very special one to be having this father's vibe as a pearl of wisdom. And a pearl of wisdom, for those of you who've been listening to me before, know that it is, if we only ever focused on this one pearl, you literally can co-create a world that works for everyone. So today we are going to focus our attention in felicitating this vibe of fathers. So let's look at what we are talking about here. So the first thing to do is to really get a grip of what does felicitation even mean? Felicitation means expressing praise for an achievement. It also means giving good wishes on a special occasion. And that's what we are doing today. We are expressing our praise for this phenomenal achievement of all fathers, good, bad, ugly, beautiful. It is a combination of fathers and mothers that have continued to propagate the human race. And, where we are at today, it is a milestone of achievement. And let's really be present to the good wishes on this very special occasion of being immersed in felicitation of a father's vibe. For me, when I went into this and I started looking at it, I looked back at my growing up years. And for me, it was like, okay, I get it. And I love the vibe of felicitation. But not all of the experiences in my growing up were something that I would say were worthy of praise. And then I looked into it. Felicitation is praise for an achievement or expressing good wishes on a special occasion. And I looked at certain experiences which weren't that great, which I didn't believe were worthy of praise, which actually taught me some of the don'ts as well. And then I looked at actually what occurred even in the moment that that incident occurred, and what emerged as a result, and what that made me become as a person was truly an achievement. I also, the more I got into my spiritual awakening experiences, I saw that, nothing occurs without any purpose. And we make soul agreements. So there was a soul agreement that I'd made with my father. And he completely, even though he ran the risk of his eldest child feeling disconnected from him, he fulfilled his soul agreement fully, 100%. And every element of that relationship between my father and I, and there were many good moments, and there were many beautiful moments. And sure enough, there were times where I felt bad. And there were certain ugly experiences too. And they all made up the fullness of this relationship, which completed our soul agreement in a very powerful way, providing a foundation and a platform for me to emerge in the way I have in the time that existed before now and where I am now, and as I progress and move forward. I also became very present to that, we do birth ourselves every single day. We birth ourselves every single day. And sure, that birthing energy is the energy of a mother. And how that birth, what occurs post-birth, the providing the nurturing and nourishment and providing the protection for your own rebirth self, that's very much a fathering vibe. So we also have that fathering vibe within us. So when we hold something against a mother or a father vibe, there's a big part of us, literally 50% of us, we are holding all of those judgments, evaluations against. So and that's why I see why the mother and the father are both pearls of wisdom. Now, with the fathering vibe, when we take on the felicitation of a father and we direct it outside of us to our own fathers, to their fathers, and everyone that is already a father or is going to be one. When we do this outside of us, we immediately apply the same felicitation to us, within us, the Father within us. And that made this, when I implemented this, it made it a very deep meditative experience. So let's begin. The first felicitation. The first felicitation is faithful and flair. So if we were to just look at purely what does faithful and flair even mean? I mean, having a flair for something is making good use of anything. I have a flair for finding positivity in adverse situation. I have a flair for discovering miracles in normal day-to-day existences. I have a flair for seeing the good in everyone and everything. I have a flair for discovering the magnificence. And what is faithful? Faithful is remaining true, consistent, and loyal. So remaining true, consistent, and loyal with this unique ability to be able to find good is quite a unique gift quite a unique power that we have within us. So when we work with these pearls of wisdom, the way you implement them is by really doing a lay of the land examination of how this particular way applies. In this case, how does this felicitation actually apply? You do a lay of the land. And you do a lay of the land, and you look at your own father, you look at your partner as a father, you know, you look at other fathers that you might have observed, and literally examine each one of those situations with this lens of faithful and fair. Now, when I looked at that with my father, remaining true and consistent and loyal, my God, I mean, he was a man of principles. You absolutely knew what you could count on him for. He was his word, no matter what, even if it meant that, you know, you might get you might be reprimanded or you might get a telling off. He was his word. He was completely consistent. You know, went to work at a certain time, came back at a certain time. There was a routine, there was a rhythm. If he was the one who was going to teach me. He was very, very good in economics and maths and those kind of subjects. And if he was going to teach me, I knew exactly what the drill was. So I could, if I chose to, prepare for myself in that way. And he was totally and utterly loyal. Now, making good of anything, this is when I applied it to my father particularly. You know, he came from, it was a very difficult time when he was born and brought up. And there was a large family, large family of, I think, 11 brothers and sisters, with only one person, with their own father being the sole earner of it. And he was a teacher. Teachers weren't paid that well. And my father wasn't the eldest child, he was the eldest son. And he literally did make good of anything that came in the way. You know, for us to have the life that we have now, all of us, you know, our ability to live anywhere in the world, our ability to have this rigor and discipline and a structured approach to getting anything accomplished, even in the Pearls of Wisdom. I could just give you a lecture on fatherhood and it'll be very inspiring. But by doing it in this way, where I'm talking about the 7 felicitations and giving you practical ways of implementing it, I do believe the seed of that was sown from what I inherited from my father. For him, it was like, okay, how does it make sense? So what? How are you going to what are we going to do with this information? So that alone got me to literally put a lens on myself and look at, where am I consistent and loyal? And I know I have a very strong instinctive ability to make good or use of anything, wherever I am. And I saw for myself that it was foundationed in what I got from observing my father, even though that observation was done in a subconscious or an unconscious way. I was very present to some of the physical disagreements or discords we might have experienced from time to time. And they remained because I chose to hold on to it until the spiritual awakenings took place. And I saw the fullness of what really went on. And with great gusto and enthusiasm, I felicitate the faithful flair of my father. And in doing so, I celebrate that in me. So when you work with these felicitations, sure, apply it to your father. Whether you find something in that or you don't, unconditionally accept whatever emerges and apply that same lens on you. And look at yourself. Where can you felicitate yourself for faithful and flair abilities? Look at yourself physically. Where are you being true, consistent, and loyal physically? Where are you displaying this mental prowess and emotional strength, connection to spirit in your social dynamics, creating an environment where you make good of anything? You will find so many real examples in your own life that you can felicitate and felicitate away. Express praise to yourself for this achievement and celebrate the good wishes on this special occasion where you have grasped the gift of felicitation, of you owning and expressing this beautiful vibe. The second felicitation is admiring and abundant. So admiring is a feeling, or it's a feeling. It's a feeling of showing esteem. And abundant, we know, is present in great quantities. It's over-sufficient. It's more than adequate. Now, this was an interesting one because, my remembrance or memory of growing up was I was always trying to impress my father. And it felt like nothing was ever good enough because those kind of appreciation words were not normal or natural to him. And yet, all these years later, when I'm applying the admiring and abundant lens to that experience, I started noticing that actually, even in times where, I was an overachiever academically, and I did that primarily because I didn't want to have anything to do with my father in the context of my dad teaching me, because he was very strict about it all. So I just decided I would be an overachiever. And he never acknowledged, that's how I remembered it, that he never acknowledged that achievement, let alone, congratulating me for the overachievement. And yet, when I looked back with this admiring and abundant felicitation lens at exactly those experiences, I saw that he would always pause, listen, examine my reports in detail. And that in itself, and he would ask me questions about, what did you do? What did you do before? How did it change for it to be like this? And I always took it as he's picking on me. But actually looking at it with this lens of admiring and abundant, I started seeing that he was in fact anchoring what were the triggers that made that difference. And that remembrance was being lodged in me every time. And because his approach was that, he never said, well done, but he asked all of these questions and he would say, I heard many years later that he was always sharing how I connected the dots and was very aware of my own strategy for making improvements. I remember my mother sharing with me that he felt comfortable that I had learned how to teach myself and was very appreciative of how clear I was in making choices. But that was his conversation with my mother. He never told me this. And my mother did say to him once that, why don't you tell her this? And my dad apparently said that, by not telling her, she will always be aware of how she's doing something, how improvements actually occur. Now, whatever choice he made to the best of his understanding at the time of being a good father. I get the gift of it when I look at it from this admiring and abundant lens. And I truly started admiring the stand he took for us to become self-sufficient, not seeking praise from someone else to improve ourselves, but actually creating our own pathways, which I've done all along, created my own pathways, created a trail. And that emerged from that experience with my father. Now, turning it on myself, looking at it in terms of me, admiring and abundant. Just imagine the joy and fun you're going to have when you apply this to yourself. Where are you feeling or showing esteem? Where are you? What is there in you physically in terms of your own abilities, mentally, that is abundant, that you can abundantly acknowledge? In your acknowledgement lies your ability to share generously. So, and how can you admire yourself for that? You start by your acknowledgement, you're actually boosting your own esteem. Now, when you're able to do that for yourself, you are generously able to share that with others. Because there is no feeling of lack in you. You don't have to feel good by putting someone else down. You already are oversufficient. There is great quantity of that which you can appreciate and admire within you. You're full of recognition, acknowledgement, and understanding of your own worthiness. So felicitate away with this lens of admiring and abundant. The third felicitation of a father vibe is treasure and triumph. So if you were to look at what is treasure, how do you relate to a treasure? It could be something very rare, very precious. It could be a person who is very esteemed and you truly treasure them. And it could be a trove of treasures that is rich in value and has the ability to enrich you. And a triumph is a great victory or achievement. A treasure that is a great victory or achievement is what a father vibe presents you with. In what I have been sharing up to now about my own relationship with my father, I notice so many treasures that are in my treasure trove. Like really, this whole experience of the power of your word, having consistency in terms of what you say, that it'll be done. Accountability, and I run a business collective. Catherine, you've been a part of it. Accountability is a very big deal there for us. What can you count on yourself for? What can others count on you? That is a treasured approach to living my life that stems from my father's vibe. It has been at the foundation of many great victories and achievements that I would acknowledge within myself. If I was to look at what is it that I treasure, within myself now. You know, there is so much that comes up. So when you look at this, this is such a joyous felicitation to work with. You know, just imagine turning this lens onto you. What's there within you that you treasure, that you can triumphantly acknowledge as an achievement? Physically, what's there? You know, maybe the place you live, maybe the place you work, maybe the education you've had, maybe your unique ability to connect with people, to gather some of the most amazing people around you, whatever it may be. You know, the power of your word, the way you express yourself. This felicitation of the Father vibe literally starts to expand your treasure trove of your own acknowledgement in such a powerful way. And remember, while you're acknowledging the treasure, also acknowledge the triumph that you have derived from actually owning this treasure. So having this gift of ability to express so crisply, so pointedly, you know, and in such a connecting the dots sort of way, it has served me massively. I can actually attribute a number of triumphs in my life as key milestones that have become enabled because of that. So similarly, when you work with this for yourself, always ground it. Remember, in you grounding your own evaluation, your own lay of the land. And here you're not just examining the lay of the land, you're actually felicitating as you're examining it. So there is a vibe of celebration. There is a vibe of acknowledgement. Here's the other piece that emerged for me when I first started engaging with the felicitation of the Father vibe. I got to see that what you say to another, you say to yourself. What you say to yourself, you say to others. So all of these stories that I had about my father, oh, poor me, you know, were actually, I was saying that to myself. And when I started felicitating it, following these 7 felicitations, I saw each one that I was felicitating in my father, I had in me, and it was multiplied. Now, I'm talking very much about my father and me, you know, and I'm doing it just because it allows me to illustrate how you work with this. The reality is, I observe now my son as a father. I observe his children, you know, and yes, they are not fathers yet, but they are fathers to be at some point in their life. And they are fathers in terms of, you know, the eldest one birthed my son as a father. So he's a father of sorts in himself. And I'm like, you can imagine any one of these felicitations. You start working with it. I'm admiring what I see in my son. And I'm experiencing the abundance that generates. And then I observe my grandkids and I notice how they have got that vibe. And I notice my niece's husband, and then I notice me, and I notice my sister, and I notice each one of you who I've been working with, how you have shown up in your regalia with this father vibe. So much to admire and feel abundant about. I mean, you become anchored and grounded in how rich and abundant life is. The great thing is, when you do it in this way, it is anchored in reality. There is no fluffiness about it, because you're actually connecting it to real life incidents. your life, not somebody else's. Your mind is settled, anchored, and you start moving from that journey of data to information, to knowledge, to wisdom, to knowing. So first it was data. Okay, what occurred with my father that I can admire? Data, data, data. And then I started looking at how did it actually contribute to abundance? I'm converting that data into information. And then I turn it over to me and look at, well, where is it showing up in me? That knowledge is becoming wisdom. And I keep working with it, expanding that same observation with my son, his children, and other amazing beings, humans, men and women and children around me. It becomes a knowing. And felicitation of a father vibe is a reality in my world, and it becomes in yours. And not only that, as it becomes a reality, you're actually in that felicitation vibe. You're in the vibe of celebration. How much better can it get? Then a fourth one. The fourth one is hardworking and harmonious. Tending to work with energy and commitment. I mean, for me, this hardworking was hard, tough. That's how I related to it. Hardworking equals tough. And yet, when I was examining this particular felicitation, hardworking and harmonious, I got that what hardworking actually is, it's to work with energy and commitment, with diligence. And harmonious is being tuned to dissolve discord. So, working with energy and commitment, with diligence, oh, absolutely. My father was that totally and completely with his family, in his work, in his responsibilities as a leader of society, as a leader within his own family, our extended family. Absolutely working with energy and with diligence was absolutely the reality with which he operated. He has inspired us no end to bring that energy and vitality and diligence in our work. That is very much a foundation. And I never realized that I observed this aspect of how he went about his life very closely. I had no idea that I observed it so well. Because not only did I observe it, I absorbed it. And I continue to express it. So what's there that you can recall or remember? If you've had a partner who's been a father to your children or his or her children, what did you observe there in terms of working with energy and diligence? That was the first time I heard from my dad, if you're doing something that's exhausting you, stop. Go energize yourself. I heard it as life's hard work. You better energize yourself. Whereas really what he was saying was, if you work with energy. That's what gives rise to diligence. Otherwise, you start compromising and cutting corners. What an amazing life lesson. I heard it differently at the time. The good news, which I understand and realize with these pearls of wisdom, is that all of your experiences, the energy signature is anchored. It is there within you. You can learn from whatever occurred in your life, whenever you choose to. It's up to you. So if you're going to be engaged in work, ensure that you have the vitality. So you work with energy, because with diligence, you get rid of false starts. You get rid of that stop-start syndrome. You get clarity, you get discernment. And with all of that in place, it's easier to tune yourself, to be dissolving any discords along the way. If you're not working with energy and you're just doing, then you run out of steam, you compromise, or you feel bad about it, you beat yourself up. So instead of actually getting on with what it is that you began, you actually go on a drunken walk, diverted to somehow coping and managing. And life goes completely out of harmony because you lose that attunement to yourself. Hardworking and harmonious go together. And remember, hardworking is working with energy and diligence. Tuning yourself to release discord along the way. That is the gift you are felicitating here. And remember, in felicitation, when you're felicitating someone, we've all attended events where there is an award being given and the person being given the award is being felicitated. That it just doesn't, nobody just says this person is being awarded for this and that's it. They felicitate. Felicitate comes with anchoring in real examples of what has actually been achieved. What's the difference that has actually been made? So when you felicitate your father and the father within you and the fathers per se, anchor it in real observation of what you see, what you have experienced yourself. If you haven't already realized, the pearls of wisdom have the power and ability to, each one of them in their own right is so whole and complete. They can literally create a world that works for everyone. And absolutely, you are the one that initiates it as you work with the pearl of wisdom. It is holistic. It literally focuses, zooms in your attention on you. Let's look at the fifth one, earnest and eclectic. Earnest and eclectic. Earnest for me felt very serious. I just had a misinterpreted understanding of earnest. And really earnest is, it is serious. And it is zealous in intention, purpose, or effort. So what earnest to me, let me say a little bit about eclectic and then I'll elaborate on this. An eclectic is, it's like having a broad range of tastes and diverse range of, being open to a diverse range of sources, diverse ideas, diverse styles, really something that nourishes and feeds your creativity. And when you do this in earnest, you stand in your intentionality. You have purpose. And there is depth to the choices you're making. There is sincerity of feeling, whilst being open to a diverse range of ideas and an eclectic mix of approaches with which you can fulfill your purpose, with which you can, achieve that intentionality. Absolutely, my dad had this in droves. He was his purpose was that we would become self-sufficient, each one of us. I was born and brought up in India, and so we were trained, each one of us, we're three girls, each one of us was trained to be the perfect housewife. And we were also encouraged, mentored, and coached to be powerful achievers academically, and have it be a bit more eclectic through my mother. She was the eclectic one. She made sure that we learned how to dance, and we really mastered that. So I was a Kathak dancer, a classical dance for 18 years, and I had a real mastery in my performances. and I was also encouraged to write, which I stopped doing straight after school. I just stopped writing halfway through school. And sure enough, because that grounding and that passion for writing was anchored when I was very, very young. Fast forward 50 years later, when I start writing again, it just comes very naturally to me. But that was anchored at that time. So this earnest pursuit gave me resilience no matter what occurred. We keep moving forward. I kept my optimism going throughout my life. And we all have had a whole variety of experiences in this human life. And we've all chosen to keep going, even if we may not talk about it. I certainly became very aware of that. This earnestness with which, I show up and do this Pearl of Wisdom or any of the other Navigating the Unknown, whether I was in Berlin at 2:30 or 1:30 in the morning, or I'm here, it doesn't matter. It's that earnestness that is at the foundation of that. The eclecticness is essential for me to allow for the topic of the Pearl of Wisdom to show up a few days prior. And it is in that allowance I bring together all the essence of everything I have learned up to this point in time in this human form. Tapping into the soul wisdom that also exists in this human form. And it is with that allowing I share what I share with you. That is earnest and eclectic combined. The ability to be able to really travel anywhere in the world, work with anyone, people at all strata of society. That is a combination of these two as well. Now, I'm just talking about myself. This father vibe exists within me. So you can imagine if you were to apply that within yourself. It got me to honor my culture. It got me to honor everything that is so magical about coming from the part of the world that I come from. I saw so much evidence around me of earnest and eclectic. That was foundational, preparing me for what I'm doing now and what is to emerge. Imagine doing this for yourself. Again, I like to break it up in bite-sized chunks or manageable sized chunks. So look at it physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and environmentally. In your examination, examine each one of these felicitations. And remember, this is not just an observation. It is a felicitation-led observation. So every time you acknowledge something within you or outside of you, you are in fact felicitating it and celebrating it. So that rejoicing vibe, which is the vibe of this 2022, you are literally ready to surf the waves of rejoicing. More about that in the other Beyond Meditation work that we do. Let's look at the sixth one. The sixth felicitation is radiant and resilient. Wow, this is an amazing one. Radiant, sending out light, shining or glowing brightly. And resilient is our ability to recoil or spring back into shape after bending, stretching, or being compressed. Now, I believed before I had my spiritual awakenings and started looking at the fullness of my relationship with my father, I believed that he actually was compressing me and holding me down, bending me out of shape, pretending that he was actually bending me back into shape. I just remembered all those kind of things. And yet, when I looked at exactly those incidents, They truly were formative, but not formative in terms of destroying my confidence. They were actually formative in enriching and enhancing my radiance and absolutely making me resilient. He was, in his choices of acting with me in the way he did, he was in shining my inner light for me to emerge out of those situations where he would be super strict and, use physical abuse from time to time. I would come out of that still shining and glowing brightly. And I saw him, what a radiance he had. I mean, he was someone whose skin was flawless, his hair was black to the day that he died, at 81 or 82. I was physically he was radiant, absolutely resilient with the kind of upbringing that they had. It was a tough, tough, tough time. And then seeing him shine to such phenomenal corporate heights of, the economic echelon in India. And he always was completely humble. Principled, yes. There was no arrogance in him. He wasn't even arrogant about his principles. They were just so. People, I gave meaning to that, and other people might have given meaning to how attached he was to his principle, but he actually was literally simply radiant and resilient and moving forward with a knowing that his family is going to be provided for, and each one is going to be self-sufficient in standing up and realizing their own potential. Absolutely mission accomplished. I was like, literally, I had tears in my eyes as I was using this felicitation, examining the radiant and resilience, which is the foundation of my own being in this human form. And then when I applied it to myself, sending out light, shining or glowing brightly, and this ability to recoil back, no matter what. I had so many evidences and examples of situations where that applied to me.
Sophie.
And the same thing will occur for you when you examine it for yourself, when you start looking at fathers around you. And in my world, the way you transform what occurs in your life is by starting with you. Your world begins with you and ends with you. So by applying these felicitations from within yourself, you can begin with your father and other fathers that you observe around you, but always bring it back to you. Because that's where the true felicitation exchange occurs. And the juiciness and the yumminess completely multiplies. Let's look at the seventh one. The seventh one is dedicated and dignified. Dedicated and dignified. Dedicated is devoted to a task or a purpose. The father vibe itself is literally each of these felicitations. The father vibe within each one of you is dedicated to each of these seven things. Not only are you dedicated, you're devoted to purposefully fulfilling your purpose and providing a container for others in your care to fulfill theirs. That is the subconscious, unconscious programming You are encoded to provide that in your father vibe. And dignity, dignified, is all about honoring worthiness. So the felicitation here is to look at, where do you find this quality within you, within your father, within other fathers that you observe around me, where you see that devotion to a task or a purpose, where they are exclusively allocated for an intention, for a particular purpose. Where do you see that? And how does that show up? How does that manifest in enriching and enhancing worthiness? When you notice and observe this in others, and you're able to acknowledge it and anchor it in real incidents, whatever your experience may have been, it transforms your relationship to your father, yes. And what it does is it transforms your relationship to at least 50% of your own vibe, which is a vibe of a father. And you become dedicated and devoted and quite singularly focused on this intention of always acknowledging and living your life, owning your own worthiness. And you become a dignitarian. Dedicated and dignified go together completely. So the felicitations of a father. In certain parts of Europe, I think Nordic Europe, Father's Day was last Sunday. And in many other parts of the world, Father's Day is coming up on this Sunday. So use this time between now and then. You know, there is the father's vibe and celebrations of that father's vibe in the air. Let's use that. Let's ride that way and engage in the 7 felicitations of a father, expressing praise for an achievement, really spreading and sharing good wishes on this special occasion, using the felicitation lens, faithful flair, admiring and abundant, treasure and triumph, hardworking and harmonious, earnest and eclectic, radiant and resilient, dedicated and dignified. Have a great time felicitating that. Felicitation is a little more than, it's beyond just celebration. Felicitation is always anchored in reality. It's grounded. And therefore, your mind, your heart, and your gut, your survival instincts, your presence in the now, and your thriving instincts all come together, rejoicing in felicitation. It's a beautiful time indeed. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mynoo. You know, thinking about all that you've shared with these 7 gifts of felicitation, it gives me a completely different vantage point to see some of the actions that were taken by my father, who's 97. So fortunate to have him around, and other male figures in my life. I think this also opens up just a new lens to see the past and to look inside with, you know, new eyes and just see others for the truth of what really is. I really, really love this when it dug deep, and thank you. So appropriate for this time. And thank you all for joining. Always such a pleasure. We look forward to seeing you all next Thursday for another Pearl of Wisdom. It will be our 70th Pearl of Wisdom. I can't believe it. So again, thank you all. And in celebration, we shall do our high 10.
Yes.
Thank you, Mynoo.
Thank you. Thank you.